Well, hello everyone. Here you show you right here of talking about right here example right here of talking about for emails right here, and we all know too that when we speak about rules though that what exactly are rules in fact, and people might even say is toward yeah, well we know exactly what a rule is that it's like it's another way of how you want to give orders and responsibilities and restrictions and everything, the basic requirements, right? And a lot of times it sure seems that way that whenever you are setting certain boundaries and certain rules and restrictions, right, it seems like that you're just kind of like, giving out orders and responsibilities and other sorts of agendas. But a lot of times it sure seems that way that yeah, well really that could the learning process also go by is toward it why can't you go by what people would suggest, especially, but like let's just say though that if we're going to be checking our emails on an every other day basis, sometime, right, even our text messages, and a lot of times you always want to know too is to where that if you could maybe set one rule, that you would like to agree with, and that that you'll be able to work out with, what do you think it would be? A lot of times, and people might even say is toward yeah, well, if you can just set one ground rule, and 102 is toward yeah, if you were to make a suggestion, and it's like so, it sure seems that way that every time we think about that, stuff like that, and you're always 102 that. But yeah, a lot of times you actually see that whenever it comes to suggestions and results, especially. But I have right here, the shown right here. We can also think about that as like maybe another example of a token of appreciation. So I'll go ahead and put down on here, like maybe right down here in the bottom here, like token, a token of appreciation. Yeah, a token. Yeah, a token of appreciation. So each time we think of yeah, for appreciation right here, for a token of appreciation. So it's another way of how you want to tell somebody that hey, thanks for answering our questions. Thanks for your time. So a lot of times it sure seems that way that when we do check our emails, a lot of times you're wondering toward it. Yeah, that even though if you believe that you got that message, for any reason at all, that you did not, yeah, well, thanks for your time or something like that. So a lot of times it sure seems that way that whenever you have an email address, especially whenever you have a personal account or anything that you're doing, and want to know too that yeah, well, do you think on average that if you could create a rule to where that people would need to respect that and follow that, then what do you think that it would be? And like I say, is to where that yeah, well, you can go ahead and put on here, and I could add a space right here, but talk about right here, like you can maybe put on here, and maybe maybe 5 or maybe 11 characters or something, something like that, like yeah, wording of a sentence. But like I say, is to where yeah, create a rule, and to where that you want to kind of give this rule like maybe a nickname, is to where that something like you see, what do I think that I would want to use, but still that talk about for create a rule that is to where that so like maybe a abbreviation first, or like anybody else would maybe even say too that if you could maybe set a ground rule to where the fact about yeah, responses first, from my follow, from my friends or something like that. So let's just say that if you were to set the rule to where that invitation from the responders or something like that. Invitation from a responder. So I know that So a lot of times it sure seems that way that from response. So yeah, so it sure seems that way that when we talk about abbreviations and in short terms or something like that, and it sure seems that way that if that's really a complete sentence right there, or like everybody else might even say that really that if you can just set at least one ground rule whenever it comes to responding to discussions or anything like that, and you're also want to know too is that if you can create a rule to where that what exactly is a rule necessarily, like those are directions, right? And if you want to look at it as to where you know what a rule is, and those are directions. Those are directions that you would need to follow. But like everybody else might even say that really that with these directions, there are directions to follow. But let's just say that on average that if you were to be a teacher or just somebody, you're given a suggestion a lot of times, and you're always want to know too that how often, how many times out of a month or maybe out of a year to where that somebody is really going to take your word for something, or maybe to listen to your suggestion. And so that's why it sure seems that way that taking a vote, number one, taking a vote for something, but you're always want to know too that each time you think about rules though and responsibilities that you're also probably thinking too is toward it. Yeah, well, really that you always knew that maybe those rules were not handwritten, by like anybody will probably say too that we don't make the rules, but of course we're going to make the suggestions and all that, certain laws and rules and all that are passed, right? But at the time you always want to know too that whenever it comes to applications and whenever it comes to support and everything, so it sure seems that way that each time we look at an email though, and like everybody else might say, is to where that doesn't really help out a lot, where that you're able to look at images or something like that. Yeah, a lot of times it's like whenever you do check your inbox, a lot of times that really what is more boring about like emails, and like anybody say is toward you go ahead and read a message like down here, and it's saying is toward explain in the package down below, click on this link or something like that. But a lot of times it sure seems that way that if you were to maybe attach any GIF or JPEG images right about here in your 102, that really that a lot of emails and maybe text messages that you would go ahead and include something artistic or something creative like that. But like everybody else would even say too, is toward it just to make that person feel a little bit more confident with what that email is for and all. But still that but on the other hand, it sure seems that way. That one thing I did want to talk about right here was talking about is toward it that whenever you do talk to somebody even over the phone, or maybe if you do meet them, and a lot of times it sure seems that way that really that they have a better idea of what you're talking about if they were actually were right there and able to talk to you about what's been going on and all that. But it sure seems that way that every time we speak about emails though, that has anybody here have thought of that, to where that email pretty much means is to where that the envelope or something like that, or something else with an E, or the exit box, or whichever what you were thinking about. But still that but the way I think about too though, that each time we think about email, a lot of times, especially if we're talking about being hired for a job, that do we necessarily think about that is to where that check the inbox and maybe check your messages a lot of times, and you're always want to know too that that you it seems like to me that whenever you do you have a lot more mail and a lot more messages than compared to maybe your ordinary locker. So let's just say that old locker that you used to use even in gym class would only hold about maybe 10 pounds of stuff, right? Maybe your gym shoes or maybe a few changes of t-shirts or something like that, but compared to an inbox. But at the time you're always 102 that whenever I did get that email inbox that first of all I was trying to work that out on my inbox to where that I can go ahead and set that to where that I would be able to receive I would be able to send out messages to any clients or anybody. So a lot of times, and I'll even tell everybody here too that whenever you were first getting some practice with that email address, that you were writing on there and you were thinking as toward, okay, yeah, well, I got an email address, but there's an email address in which I know that tell people too. Really, what's the difference? But whenever you are assigned an email address just to receive an important document, and a lot of times it's like it's already created for you, and they just say that all you gotta do is just set the code and set the password and all that, but it sure seems that way, that each time we think about emails, though, and you're always wondering to whether you got one email that where you receive messages from the manager or from a client or something like that, where you only receive from your inbox, but then you cannot respond to that person unless if you use your business account or unless if you use your personal account. So it sure seems that way, that it all kind of starts over the fact about that every time we think about email, though, that why is it that maybe that we had to put a Z or an S right there, and like anybody say too that emails. And you're thinking as toward emails, is that what it's called? Is the emails, or do you want to kind of call it that that the and the emailer or something like that. I mean, I really don't really even know, but I tell you one thing, everybody, that it's gotten a little bit more complicated to the point to where that hopefully that the email service doesn't get to that point to where that you pretty much have to call it something kind of like a backpack carrier or something like that, to where if you have maybe more than 5 slots altogether, then you would always have to make sure that give it a different color and a different business name or something like that. But I mean, I really don't know. In case of anybody that asks me too, that whenever you say email, though, that the email. I'm just trying to write right here that for the email, and so let's just say that on average, though, that if we were to think about about the email service, right? And you're probably thinking as to where that whenever it comes to emails, that well, why would we even think too is toward it that you don't even have to stamp the envelope for this service. Well, what you would need to do is you just need to make sure that you got a return. So yeah, if that's really how it works, is that the returns are your contacts, right? So it sure seems that way, that the returns of the contacts, right? And you're always thinking as to where that if you have one email for business and maybe one email for your personal use or something like that, but half the time it seems like that 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 there is a type of email to where that you created a new a group something like like it maybe like a discussions meeting or something like that. And let's just say that if you were to call it this mailbox right here, chat. So something like that, and at the time you want to know too, with no spaces or anything like that, and I can just put on like maybe like in parenthesis marks or something like that, chat come to me or something like that, and I really like anybody else would say too that that don't even look like a word right there. That right there, that it looks like chat. Chat come to me or something like that. But to me, if we were to look at that real closely right there, that that right there looks like it's like it's a ringtone or something like that. I tell everybody here that whenever I look at that, it's going to remind me a little bit of a proper name for a ringtone. But that right there is supposed to be like four words combined into one, right there. And so every time we think about email, though, that you'll want to know too that if you're trying to experiment, if you're just to experiment around with see what happens if you try something new, right? But a lot of times it sure seems that way that how do we explain to our kids over the fact about that whenever you're experimenting around with something and at the time you don't really know what you're doing, you're just checking it out or whatever, but at the time you always want to know too that really what you really are working on right here is that you're just trying to figure out here about if you really are that desperate to know what this does, if you try this out or if you try that out or something like that. But it sure seems that way that every time we think about emails, though, that we're talking about a disk, right? Should it be the same thing as a disk or a table? And you're probably thinking too that it's the exact same thing as a desk or a table, but this desk or table is actually portable. And so I can just put on here portable. And so I guess if a lot of companies would buy into that, to where really, email service and using the electronic version and all that of the ebook and all that, that right there is supposed to be portable. And so every time we speak about portable, all we necessarily thinking about is to where that portable means portable means that you can carry around with you and it's battery operated, right? But it sure seems that way that how often are we really going to think about that to where that portable means that it's more convenient and more convenient, flexible, more convenient. More convenient, and so that basically means is to where that people are going to be on it more often. Somebody's going to maybe be checking it more often or something like that. So every time we speak about convenience, right? And you're always thinking as to where really that every time we do think about this idea about inbox or mailer or something like that, emails, that it sure seems that way that when we first started getting used to the fact about how mailing letters and all that even worked, and you were probably thinking too that usually it was Monday through Friday that you would check your mail, but it seems like that even on the weekends it seems like that you get a lot of ads and all that, advertisements on it. But the way I think about it too that each time I do think about email though, and tell people too that really that whenever I do think about that, I also think about you think about desk. Do you think about calculator or batteries too much of the time? But I'm like, well, really, the type of words that I think about most of the time are desk and table. Desk, table, but how often are you going to really think about pencil or pen? Yeah, does pencil come before pen, or does pen come before pencil? I'll just put on here that pencil, and then pen. So it seems like to me that each time we think about this right here, that people might even say that really that you would probably be using the pen, not the pencil, but it's like you want to know too that every time we go by so far saying this to our email, right? And you're probably thinking too that you know, yeah, well, you call it just because it's electronically, right? But how often do we gonna call it, P? P for the P mail or something like that. And I mean, I really don't even know everybody, but I'm just saying right here, P for P mail or something like that. P mail, why would you want to call something P mail? Well, maybe for partner or something like that. P for partner or for personal or something like that, for the P mail or something like that. So if you were to call it with a P mail inbox or something like that, then you say is to where it means portable. Yeah, check your little portable pocket partner or something like that, the pocket partner, and I actually look, I'm like, yeah, anything portable, but that the portable the pocket partner. And somebody might even say that the pocket partner. The pocket partner is supposed, I'm like, yeah, what do you mean by partner? I'm like, well, I'm talking about that little device that you have handy, that the one that helps you makes your job more convenience to you, for the time that you use it and all that, the pocket partner. But half the time you're also thinking too is that anybody say that, yeah, well, if you get an invitation, of course, just to participate, number one, but I invite you to come to this special event, and so I'll just put, I'm like, yeah, talk about that, but talk about here, but I'd like to come to this special event, like, so it's like special event. So in a lot of ways, it sure seems that way, that every time we think about that, and you're also thinking too that how often how do we how important do we think that means, is that when we are invited to something, and let's just say that on average though, that if you're going to be getting an invitation by through email or something like that, but like everybody else might even say that based on their experience though, that it sure seems that way, that you might still receive an invitation by postal mail or something like that, but like everybody else might even say too, that is toward it whenever you are invited to something, and like everybody else might say that how how important you think that makes it feel, as knowing about is that whenever you're invited to something, and something that you find very important, very interesting, and but still that but on the average though, that when we do speak about create a rule, it's like an invitation from responses directly to follow. So it sure seems that way, that every time we think about rules though, that it's like, yeah, that if you could create one rule that maybe everybody would agree to follow, for sure, that everybody says toward it, yeah, well, for anything, respect others, and the other one could also be share, and So a lot of times I'm like, yeah, and I can tell everybody here that I can be honest with everybody here that would probably be you know the number one rule that I'm sure that even the teachers would say too, that for sure if you're going to be participating in any of those meetings or any of those events and all that, that would probably be the number one rule right there. I could put on here number one, rule number one. Okay, share and be courteous and respectful, and so that's why it seems like that it seems like, yeah, that if you could create one rule though and talk about for share, and you might even say is toward yeah, well, and rule number two that that yeah, it is mine, but I am willing to show you. Yeah, or I'm like, yeah, I am willing to share my good confidence. So a lot of times it seems like that. Yeah, what do you mean by that? So a lot of times it seems like that if you're trying to teach anybody, maybe summer school or something like that, or yeah, during maybe during Sunday school or something like that, anything that you're trying to show somebody, and you want to know too is that what exactly what is that supposed to mean right there? Rule number two is it is mine, but I am willing to share with you my good confidence, and yeah, maybe yeah, for true love, true love means feeling. So a lot of times it's like. So it sure seems that way that rule create a rule invitation from responses the directions to follow. So it sure seems that way that every time we think about rules, a lot of times rules and responsibilities. So do you think that if anything you want to go ahead and maybe put that into like maybe a conclusion or a narrative or something like that, to where you put something into a complete sentence, if it's maybe a request or something like that. But a lot of times it sure seems that way. That I see that quite a bit. But at the time you're 102 that if you want to go and call it the P mail, or like anybody say it's always been called the email or something like that. But let's just say that on average though that if you were to let's just say that if you were to be maybe writing an invitation to somebody, and let's just say that yeah, follow my suggestion. So let's just say that if I were to start the sentence out like that, right there, follow my suggestion, okay? Follow my suggestion, and then I can maybe put like a symbol right here to where something like yeah, click follow this right here or something like that. So yeah, that we all know that the symbols like this. So it sure seems that way that every time we think about something like that, and a lot of times it sure seems that way that with a lot of social media work that we see nowadays, and half the time you're 102 that you get the idea just by playing with that old-fashioned record player that you used to have, maybe grandma or grandpa used to have, and now it seems like that we have this capability now to where that all you really have to do is just push the right buttons and set the right settings or anything like that. But a lot of times it sure seems that way that to where that your ability to where you can write messages and maybe correspond with professionals and maybe with other clients and all that. But at the time you're always want to know too is to where that when we talk about share, right? When we do talk about share, that not only are people able to look at what you're doing and what you're working with, but we're also talking about is to where that that rule number one is to share, right? But it sure seems that way to where that really that you really need to know what it is, but still, like everybody else might even say, is toward it that every time you think about email, though, that you also want to think about is the text partner or something like that. So a lot of times it's like that every time you think about email, that you can call it test partner if you want, but everybody else might say is to where the text partner, the text partner or something like that. But a lot of times it sure seems that way that testing your ability, but at the time you're always want to know too is to where that whenever you do create a rule, though, you're always want to know too is to where that it's another way of how you want to give an order, right? So it's like talk about for invitation. So like create a rule. It's all about an order. This right here, an order ordered by a requirement. So it sure seems that way that every time, if we were to take notes about stuff like this right here, and you're always want to know too, is to where that, you all remember what the principal said those years ago about is to where that the things about knowing about the rules and everything about there at the school and all that, but still, it sure seems that way is to where that when we do speak about education, right? When we do speak about the requirements, that it sure seems that way. That if you were to actually put your mind up to something, so let's just say if I were to put on here is to where that if you put your mind to like put your mind. So yeah, if I were to start out the sentence by saying put your mind, put put your mind for all that you want. Yeah, I'll just say it for all you want. So if you were to put your mind for all you want, then what exactly is it that you would learn from that? Like everybody else might even say that, another word of how you want to cause this to where if there were no rules and restrictions, then maybe there would be more mistakes that would be done. Like everybody else might even say that. Do you think, on average, that if there were no rules and no restrictions based on for what you need to learn and then maybe that there would be more mistakes done. So like everybody else might even say that if you're if you were I'm like so half the time it seems like to me that you really what's the best way of how to explain it over the fact about if you were to put your mind for all that you would want, then maybe that there would be more mistakes that would be made compared to compared to following the rules and requirements. So it sure seems that way that if we were to actually do the studies about that, the rules and requirements, that there will be less mistakes. So I know a lot of like the state and everybody else would say is to where that if you think on average that's just how the system works, right? To where that there will be more mistakes if you were to if you were to say that if everything that you did for your career and life or anything like that, if everything that you did, everything that you were to put your mind up for, anything that you had a passion for, right? Everything that you did and that you were working hard for, if you can get all that you want with no rules and restrictions, then maybe that there will be more mistakes made, right? So that's why it sure seems that way. The less mistakes that are made and known about for what rules and what requirements they had to be followed. And so that's why it sure seems that way. That like a filter, and so it sure seems that way. That another way of how you want to describe a filter, though, and like people may say, is to where it filters out all the germs and bacteria and all, but still that. But every time we do speak about the fact about whenever it comes to setting a rule and a guideline and everything, and you're always wanting to know too is to where that if you are paying for your tuition cost, and maybe if you are paying even a deposit, and maybe if you're paying for the books and the materials and everything, then why don't you let this person make their decisions about what they want to do? Why is it that you're setting all these rules and restrictions and everything about what they can do and what they can learn and everything? But it sure seems that way that it kind of goes by on averages to where that if you put everything to your mind to it, that you can still do that, but then on average though, that you also gotta go by the requirements too. So it's like like everybody else might even say, is to where that rule number one, share, share with others. I'm like, oh yeah, share, and I can put on here that share, and talking about is toward that share. I'm like, yeah, research, and I can tell everybody here too that well, what exactly is research? I'm like, those would probably be my two objectives that I would probably put on there for rule number one and rule number two. And rule number three is, waiting, before you get my permission, before you pass it, to another client or something. But still, that, everybody else might even want to know too that, can you explain like down here, what do you mean by research? Well, I can explain right here. What is research? Research. That's another definition for something you found from an experiment. From an experiment. That became useful. So yeah, so like everybody else might even say that when we do talk about research, it's all about finding something, right? So yeah, something, a new product or a new invention, something like that. But a lot of times it seems like that, you may want to know too, as to where that, yeah, well, really, that whenever you are going to be doing your research about something, you're finding something that maybe not everybody knows about. And so that's why it seems like that, yeah, well, that would probably be my rule number one, or, like, yeah, rule number two would be, yeah, for it to be yours. But at the time, you're always want to know too. That I'm like, I don't have all these all in order right here, but like, yeah. But what would you want to research be number two right there? If you want to put number two or something, yeah, kind of switch those around right there. Yeah, rule number one, share. Rule number two, do the research. Rule number three, it is mine. And but still that. Do you think that maybe rule number five would maybe be love? Love the partner. You'll love them once you get to know them. Yeah, you'll love them. Maybe if their idea, if you like, yeah, well you gotta like them for it. Only if it does the favor or something like that. But at the time, it sure seems that way. That every time we think about support, and maybe when we think about the home page or something like that to a website, and like everybody else might even say that really that when we do speak about rules, though, it's like, yeah, well, really that that when we do think about that a lot of times, and you're always thinking about too, is that yeah, share it. I don't know why it's so hard, to share, but I ask you to go ahead and share at least just once, so that way you can let other people look at it and let them use it. But at the time, I tell you one thing, everybody, that you want to know too is to where that why is it that it seems to be a lot harder to share something than compared to having your own belongings? But like everybody else might say that, yeah, well, somebody might wind up doing, may not give it back or something like that, or it could get broken or anything like that. But still it. But at the time, you're always 102 is toward it. Whenever you do create a rule, a lot of times, and people may say that means that you're the boss. You're the boss, and you can start giving out orders and telling people what they can or cannot do, stuff like that. But at the time, it sure seems that way. That whenever we do speak about emails, a lot of times, and people might say is toward it, yeah, well. When we do speak about email service a lot of times, it's like your email is another way of how you want to cause us toward to explain the package that was delivered, to individuals, from earlier. And so a lot of times it's like you want to know too that whenever it comes to email service, a lot of things, but really though that I also want to talk about over here. I'm like, I can just put on here talking about for emails of of ways of different signs and symbols that you would normally get if you were using a email. I'm like, yeah, cause see what is that right there. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's the keyboard right there. But which one do I want to go ahead and use right here? But anyway, just but really that those are flags, right? Okay. Oh, I'm just going through this right here, but yeah, just the World Wide Web or something like that. But anyway, but yeah, I'll tell you one thing, everybody, that but every time you think about the email service a lot of times, and you might even think too that yeah, during the day that you might check, you may check one of your emails just because of the fact that yeah, you got a message from your boss waiting, to be read in there or something like, yeah, what is this? Okay, yeah, that's a sound, but yeah. So a lot of times, if you are getting any, emails for any reason at all, yeah, please read this book, right here or something like that, or yeah, so, or yeah, maybe if somebody is trying to send you money or something like that, and maybe if it is something about yeah, unread, the mailbox right there. I don't know if we all can see this right here, but yeah, message indicator. There's a message. There's a like yeah, you got an email earlier waiting for your signature or something like that. So sure, I'm like, yeah, then there's a message that requires a key, a personal key or something like that. But a lot of times it sure seems that way. That every time we do, think about emails a lot of times, and you're all, you're probably thinking this toward a lot of that stuff that you usually see on an actual desk, right? So every time you think about that you think about desk and table right there. But how often are we necessarily going to be thinking about is to where that a lot of the stuff that you would normally see on a disc, right? But you're also thinking too that yeah, how often are we maybe going to see that credit card? Or I'm like, oh yeah, like anybody say this to you, okay, yeah, that that stack of books, you got a stack of books right there. That stack of books, you don't really see that too often, and maybe that little that pink or that blue book or something like that. I'm like, who knows? But at the time, it sure seems that way. That you know, the things that we see nowadays, whenever it comes to print, and maybe whenever it comes to music or something like that. And so that's why it seems like that every time we speak about email services or anything that you're going to be doing on a daily basis, and you're probably thinking as to where that if you can just set at least one rule, what do you think they would be? Like, well, really, that just knowing as to where that learning to share, number one. But like everybody else might say, for sure that maybe the rule is not going to be about the fact about that yeah, well, I go ahead and make the prices, yeah. How many of us can maybe raise their hand to where that maybe rule number four would be is to pay a deposit or something like that. Rule number four, to pay a deposit. And people may say that what? Like never mind. Yeah, really, well, what does never mind mean? And I can tell everybody here that yeah, never mind means that don't worry about it. But still, that but at the time it seems like that yeah, just kidding. But anyway, but yeah, rule number four, pay a deposit, and that deposit would include something like yeah, most deposits, and I know, like everybody else might say, is toward it, a deposit of maybe $100 or something like that. But let's just say that on average, that most of the time with most invitations, though, that if you can actually follow at least two of these rules, most important objectives, and for sure that they might even say that according to that email that you received from earlier, that it asked you to make $100 deposit, right? But don't worry about that because we want to send you $100 gift card, and so like a lot of companies might even say that if there's a lot of work in progress that was made, especially, and so they'll probably say is to where that if you participate in this meeting number one, then we will be glad to send you a gift card, and so it sure seems that way that how often would that really be the case toward that people are saying is toward that rule number one, to share, and but still that but half the time you always want to know too is like yeah, it is mine. Pay a deposit, but I am willing to share my good confidence and true love. So a lot of times it seems like that every time you think about that though, and you're always want to know too that that yeah, you look at these images and like yeah, and talk about yeah, application and all, but it sure seems that way that you'll want to know too that people might even say that I did not proceed with the application because it's asking for a deposit, or I it's asking you to complete a job assessment or something. It's asking you to take a quiz or do an assessment, or maybe to write a paper to talk about what would you do if this situation came to this or it came to that conclusion or something like that. But a lot of times it sure seems that way that every time we speak about emails, and you're always want to know too that really that how often are we gonna be thinking about office or table, compared to that, maybe to the sweepstakes or something like that. But everybody else might even say that that message from earlier was telling you that that I have something for you. So a lot of times it seems like, whenever you do get a message like that in 102 is to where that how often are we really going to look forward to that? To where that whenever you do receive something, yeah, upon receive, and yeah, upon received. So a lot of times it seems like every time you do think about that, you're always 102 is that you may have not ordered it, but still, oh Mike, knowing about the things that you've earned, from the work that you do, and like everybody else might even say that even if people, I'm like, yeah, even if you are veterans and maybe nurses or maybe retired business, I'm like, yeah, if you're retired, that you might even say too that a lot of things that you worked hard for and 102 that if you do receive a message on a greeting card saying toward it that yeah, we have something for you that's waiting in your mailbox, and so yeah, so a lot of times it seems like that every time you see that message really anywhere, maybe on a greeting card or a text message or something like that, and you're thinking too is toward it, why can't the message say something like, package or something like that, pending, or something like that, yeah, gift certificate or something like that. So how come, yeah, certificate. So a lot of times it seems like a certificate, and so a lot of times you're always want to know too that every time you do think about that toward that yeah you have yeah, we have something for you, and so every time you might think about that, you think is toward it yeah, do you think sweet, sweet and kind, sweet and kind. Sweet and kind, and so yeah, you might even think too that sweet and kind, and that's why it seems like that whenever you check your messages every day, that you might even say is that you know how many of us are really going to maybe be asking that question of the topics whenever it comes to receiving a gift, from somebody, and thinking too that okay, yeah, well, really that you're always thinking too is that from how complicated things are and how stressful things can be, especially, and you're always want to know too that whenever you do receive a message, about something, waiting for you to be delivered, yeah, I got a package waiting for you, something like that, and so that's why it seems like that. Yeah, if you want, yeah, pay it forward, but then also that if you want to look at it as toward it, something that you can maybe think about is to where that a lot of hard. I'm like, yeah, hard work, or like, yeah, it could be a number of reasons really, but at the time it seems like toward it, how often when we think about that though, that what does it actually feel like to receive a gift from maybe somebody that you've only met maybe once, maybe out of if it's maybe been 6 months since you talked to this person, or maybe you didn't know this person very well, that let's just say that you received a gift from somebody, or maybe if you did receive something, if you received something from somebody, and you're always 102 that you may not find out until about maybe 6 months later about, what this letter was about, or what this note was about, or something like that. But half the time, it sure seems that way that when we do think about application, and maybe when we do think about, website, COVID vaccines, or maybe support a lot of times, and you're always wondering to where that whenever you do create a rule, and when you follow that rule, that do we think about too much about the fact about that? Yeah, well, really, that you want to be in charge of something, or you want to go ahead and set the rules just because that you're trying to trying to tell somebody something, or maybe if they're just for protection or something like that, or just to tell somebody that I really, based on my experience, that's why that I'm trying to tell you about what I strongly suggest. And so that's why it seems like that whenever you do create a rule, that you are trying to provide good confidence and experience about to try and tell somebody about, based on from your experience, that and your knowledge and strengths and all that you're just trying to tell this person about that something. And they're like everybody else might say that's somebody else, they're still trying to figure that out too. But so a lot of times it seems like that every time you think about that, though, and you're wondering to where that, yeah, well, really, that, every time you do think about mail, though, and all, but still, that, but it's like you're warned to where that each time you think about, putting that application for a job, but let's just say that on average, though, that application did not even go to that employer. That application actually went to somebody else who actually came across your resume, and maybe if anything that they were able to read your profile and actually find out that just a little bit about for what you do, and the things that you're good at and all that. So it sure seems that way, like everybody else might even say that every time we think about an application, we probably filled out so many of them to the point to where that they're like a deck of cards, that, yeah, it's all just for practice. It's all just for fun. You're not really getting anywhere with them, really. I'm like, you filled out so many of them to where half the time you're trying to remember, where all that, what all that you send them out to, which companies. But we're also talking about that. What if it's maybe a year later to where you find out that there's a company maybe, and I'm like, yeah, there's a company that maybe within about miles away, a few miles away, that's trying to get in touch, get in reach with you about a job opening, and or something like that. And so we might even want to know too that we may not find out until maybe 6 weeks later about if there, whenever the application process, and whenever it is processed. But half the time you're always want to know too is that yeah, you may work every day on it, the work and the process and all that, but you're always worried to where that thinking is to where that the portable pocket partner, though, that you're thinking is that you put a lot of hard work into something, and thinking that 4 years and nothing's happened yet. Well, at the time you're always want to know too that how many answers are provided, and that's why it sure seems that way that when we do think about a rule, though, that you're thinking is toward it. Number one, that is your stuff, right? And so number one, I can put on here that response to the directions followed, and I can put on I can put like right here, your stuff, your stuff. So yeah, your stuff is actually posted on your profile, right? That is your stuff, and your stuff is now visible. Your stuff is visible to the public, right? And your stuff is now visible. Is now visible. So your stuff is now visible to the public. And so it sure seems that way that every time we think about that, though, and you're always thinking as to where that, if your stuff is going to be visible to the public, then for sure you would like to at least create one rule to tell everybody that, you please, give me credit, for the work that I do or something like that. So yeah, so a lot of times it seems like that every time we do speak about the public, though, that you're probably thinking is to where that, yeah, like, yeah, people can actually see the work that you're doing. People can actually see what you're working on. And, but still. But on the other hand, that it's like everybody else might even say is that, how often or really is, can really everybody read your mind whenever it comes to putting something together and trying to solve problems or anything that you're working on during your spare time. And you're always want to know too that not everybody's going to understand what is it that you're working on. So it's like, yeah, to respond, but not everyone understands. Yeah, not everyone understands. Not everyone understands at first. Or I could just, not everybody understands. But it's like, not everybody understands, but it sure seems that way that, whenever we do start out an email a lot of times and thinking this to where that, all this stuff that, you always want to know too, that, you don't quite understand what all this is all about right here. But, I can tell everybody here too that all this writing right here is already starting to kind of remind me a little bit of something that you would see on like a ticket or something like that. Like if you're looking at an actual ticket or some sort of invitation that we don't if you're just kind of scrolling down this list right here of like this right here, you got the email attached right here. So if this right here was supposed to be like a printed ticket right here, and right down here on the bottom would be like maybe a memo recorded or something like that. But it sure seems that way that, yeah, like everybody else might say, if you get like a message as a return, and 102 is that, yeah, well, the reason why this is attached right here at the bottom is because of the fact that, just to follow up about responding, like everybody else might even say too, that whenever you do check your emails a lot of times, that you would have that to where that if there was any mistake that was made from earlier, that more most likely that will be visible on the email. But like everybody else might say that really that it takes the person a minute to find out. Okay, yeah, well that there's a typo error earlier, or there was something went wrong and the email didn't go through, so I had to resend that message or something. But still that. But a lot of times it seems like that you're always thinking about that too, about the best ways of how you want to describe the requirements. But talking about put the put your own mind for what you want, and the more mistakes are going to happen if you got everything that you wanted, and if you pursued it and everything that you wanted. And a lot of times it seems like a lot of parents will probably tell their children too that if everything in life worked that way, then maybe there would probably be a lot more mistakes that were made compared to if there were rules and requirements that were set to where there will be less mistakes that were made. And less mistakes, but then also that there will be what you call that knowing about that, yeah, for what is recommended and such and such, but still that. But talk about right here that like yeah, the table, but I'm sure we've all seen this right here. But anyway, but talk about these 2 pages right here need to be completed and signed by Friday, and so yeah, so it's like so each time thinking about that, your invitation, to this special event. So it's like that's something to think about. But anyway, but talk about for create a rule and just basics understanding about is toward sharing. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.